In a small town where everyone knew each other, there lived a couple named Tom and Sarah. Married for over a decade, they were the kind of couple that appeared to be the envy of many. Tom, a hard-working mechanic, was known for his reliability and dedication. Sarah, a warm-hearted woman, was a school teacher, beloved by her students and admired for her kindness. Together, they had built a comfortable life, filled with laughter and shared dreams. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage, cracks began to form. It all started when Sarah's younger brother Mike moved back to town after a few years away. Mike was charming and adventurous, a stark contrast to Tom's steady nature. Sarah welcomed him into their home with open arms, thinking it would be nice to have family around again. Little did she know that this would be the beginning of a chain of events that would shatter her marriage. Tom had always trusted Sarah implicitly. He worked long hours at the garage, often coming home late, while Sarah spent her days at the school and evenings preparing lessons. It wasn't long before Mike's presence began to change the dynamics. He would come over more frequently, sharing stories of his travels and dreams, captivating Sarah's attention. Their bond grew stronger, and before long, it turned into something that would haunt Tom's heart. One fateful evening, Tom returned home earlier than usual, eager to surprise Sarah with a special dinner. He had planned a romantic evening, but as he approached the house, he noticed something off. The lights were dimmed, and laughter echoed from inside. Concerned yet curious, he peered through the window, and what he saw shattered his world. There was Sarah, entwined in Mike's arms, laughter turning into something more intimate. Tom's heart raced, a mix of disbelief and betrayal flooding his veins. He stumbled back, feeling the weight of his reality crash down around him. The woman he had loved, who had promised to stand by him, was in the arms of his own brother. Anger boiled within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deep sense of hurt. He couldn't believe that the two people he trusted most had betrayed him in the most profound way. Instead of confronting them immediately, Tom decided to take a step back. He needed to gather his thoughts, to understand what had happened. In the following days, he observed Sarah and Mike's interactions. Each time, feeling the sting of betrayal even deeper. They were careless, caught up in their own world, unaware of the pain they were inflicting on him. Tom realized that a simple confrontation would not suffice. He wanted them to understand the depth of their betrayal and the pain they had caused. Tom began to formulate a plan, one that would ensure they felt the weight of their actions. He started by becoming more involved in the community, attending local events, and reconnecting with friends who had been pushed aside during his marriage. He shared his experiences, his heartbreak, and slowly began to gain a support network. Tom was determined to rise above the pain, to show them that he was not a man to be trifled with. Weeks passed, and Tom's demeanor shifted. He became more confident, more engaged with life. He found solace in helping others, volunteering at a local shelter, and even taking up a new hobby. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mike continued their affair, oblivious to the storm that was brewing around them. Tom eventually found out that Sarah had plans to throw a big party to celebrate a milestone birthday for Mike. It was a perfect opportunity for him to execute his plan. He decided to attend the party, not as an unsuspecting husband, but as a man who had reclaimed his dignity. He would confront them publicly, ensuring that their betrayal would not only affect him, but would resonate throughout the community. On the day of the party, Tom arrived with a calm demeanor. Despite the turmoil inside him, the atmosphere was festive, laughter and music filling the air as he stepped into the backyard filled with friends and family. He spotted Sarah and Mike, locked in an embrace, their smiles lighting up the space. It took every ounce of strength to walk toward them, but he was determined. With a steady voice, Tom cleared his throat, commanding attention as he addressed the crowd. "I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate Mike's birthday. It's heartwarming to see so many familiar faces," he began, his eyes fixed on Sarah and Mike. "But I think it's time for a little honesty, don't you?" Gasps filled the air as the guests turned their attention to the trio. Sarah's face paled, and Mike shifted uncomfortably. Tom continued, "I've been watching the two of you for some time now, and it's become painfully clear that the bond you share is built on betrayal and deceit. While I worked hard to provide for our family, you both chose to destroy what we had." The tension was palpable as whispers spread through the crowd. Tom felt a strange sense of satisfaction as he laid bare the truth. "Sarah, you've broken vows that were meant to last a lifetime. And Mike, you've betrayed not just me, but the trust of family. This isn't just about me, it's about the integrity we owe each other." Tom's voice rose, filled with emotion. "You think you can hide your actions behind smiles and laughter, but the truth has a way of surfacing. Tonight, you will face the consequences of your betrayal." He turned to the guests. "I invite anyone who has ever been deceived or hurt to step forward and share their stories, because we all deserve to live in truth, not lies." One by one, people began to share their own experiences with infidelity and betrayal, creating a powerful atmosphere of solidarity. Tom watched as Sarah and Mike squirmed under the weight of their actions, realizing that their deception was no longer just a secret. They were exposed, vulnerable, in front of friends and family. As the night wore on, Tom found strength in the support of his community. He had reclaimed his voice, his dignity, and in doing so, he had ensured that Sarah and Mike understood the gravity of their betrayal. The party was no longer a celebration. It had transformed into a moment of reckoning. In the following days, the news of the party spread like wildfire through the town. Tom had not only confronted his wife and brother, but he had also empowered others to speak out against dishonesty and betrayal. Sarah was left to deal with the fallout, her reputation tarnished, and her relationship with Mike strained. Tom, on the other hand, had emerged stronger, a man who had turned betrayal into an opportunity for growth. As the weeks passed, Tom focused on healing. He sought therapy to process the emotional turmoil he had endured, learning how to rebuild his shattered trust in others. He discovered a newfound sense of purpose, pouring his energy into the community and helping others who had faced similar struggles. His story became one of resilience rather than merely revenge. Sarah and Mike, on the other hand, faced the consequences of their actions. Their relationship, once filled with excitement and passion, began to crumble under the weight of guilt and shame. The facade they had created was torn apart, and they found themselves isolated from the very community that had once embraced them. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced around the gathering, Tom felt a surge of fulfillment wash over him. He had created something beautiful from the ashes of his pain, a community bound together by shared experiences and the understanding that life could be rebuilt, even after the most devastating betrayals. As the evening wore on, people shared stories of their own struggles and victories. Among them was an elderly gentleman named Walter, who spoke of a time when he had to confront his own heartache after his wife left him for someone younger. With a twinkle in his eye, he recounted how he had taken up gardening, nurturing each plant as a way to heal his wounded heart. Sometimes, he said, it's the simplest things that help us find peace again. Tom listened intently, soaking in the wisdom of the older man's words. It reminded him of his own journey, how he had transformed his grief into art, crafting each piece of wood, not just into furniture, but into a symbol of his resilience. He admired the way Walter had turned his pain into something nurturing, and it inspired Tom to think deeper about how he could continue to help others. As the gathering began to wind down, Tom noticed a familiar figure lingering at the edge of the crowd. It was Sarah. She stood awkwardly, her hands clasped together, as she watched him interact with the community he had built. The light from the gathering illuminated her face, revealing both vulnerability and remorse. Tom felt a wave of mixed emotions wash over him. Part of him wanted to confront her about the past, to remind her of the hurt she had caused. But another part of him, the one that had learned to forgive, urged him to keep his heart open. With a deep breath, Tom walked over to her. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice steady yet compassionate. "I'm glad you came." She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I wanted to see how you were doing. You have to find a way to forgive yourself before you can seek forgiveness from others." As they spoke, something shifted in the air between them. Tom realized that while he had moved on, Sarah was still trapped in the cycle of guilt and shame. It was a heavy burden, one that could consume a person if left unchecked. He felt a flicker of compassion rise within him, a desire to guide her towards the light he had found. "Maybe you could join us in some of our gatherings," he suggested. "You might find comfort in sharing your experiences with others who have faced similar challenges." A small spark of hope flickered in Sarah's eyes. "You really think that could help?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of skepticism and yearning. "I believe it can," Tom replied earnestly. "Community is powerful. We can lift each other up, and who knows, you might even inspire others to find their way through their own darkness." As they parted ways that evening, Tom felt a sense of closure that had eluded him for so long. He had extended a hand towards Sarah, not to rekindle what they once had, but to help her find her own path to healing. It was a moment that encapsulated the journey he had taken, a journey marked by pain, but ultimately defined by growth, resilience, and the ability to forgive. In the days that followed, Sarah took Tom's advice to heart. She began attending the community gatherings, where she listened to the stories of others and slowly found the courage to share her own. The more she opened up, the more she realized that she was not alone in her struggles. Each story resonated with her, reminding her of the fragility of human connections and the importance of honesty. Meanwhile, Tom continued to thrive, his woodworking business blossoming alongside his newfound role as a mentor. He was approached by several people seeking guidance on navigating their own heartbreaks, and he welcomed the opportunity to help. His heart, once shattered, had become a vessel of hope for many. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, Tom began to notice a shift in Sarah and Mike's relationship. Their guilt seemed to morph into something darker, an undercurrent of resentment and anger that threatened to consume them both. Tom caught glimpses of their struggles during the gatherings, and he felt a pang of sympathy for them. He knew all too well the consequences of unchecked guilt and betrayal. One evening, as he was preparing for another gathering, Tom received an unexpected phone call from Mike. The tone in Mike's voice was harsh, laced with desperation. "Tom, we need to talk. I can't keep living like this. Sarah he's not doing well. I think she's in a dangerous place." Tom's heart raced as he listened. He had always envisioned a different kind of confrontation, one filled with anger and accusations. But now, faced with Mike's plea, he felt a deep sense of concern for them both. "What do you mean by dangerous?" he asked, his voice steady. "She's become withdrawn, and I think she's blaming me for everything that's happened. I'm worried she might do something drastic if we don't address this," Mike confessed, his voice cracking with emotion. Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I'll help you, Mike, but you need to be honest with her. You both need to face what you've done together. It's the only way to heal." "Can you come over? I think she'd listen to you," Mike urged, desperation seeping through his words. Reluctantly, Tom agreed. He knew that facing Sarah again would stir up old emotions, but he also recognized that this moment could potentially be a turning point for them all. As he drove to their home, he reflected on the nature of betrayal and the complexities of forgiveness. It was a journey that rarely followed a straight path, one that often looped back to confront past wounds. When he arrived, Tom found Sarah sitting in the living room, her expression a mixture of anger and sadness. Mike stood nearby, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The atmosphere crackled with tension, and Tom could sense the storm brewing beneath the surface. Arriving at Sarah and Mike's home, Tom felt a mixture of apprehension and resolve. The once familiar surroundings now seemed steeped in memories that clawed at his heart. Yet he knew he had a responsibility to face both of them, not just for his own sake, but for Sarah's as well. He parked his truck, took a deep breath, and stepped out, the weight of his resolve anchoring him. As he approached the front door, he couldn't help but recall the times they had shared as a family. Sarah's laughter ringing through the walls, the smell of her cooking wafting through the air, and the simple comfort of knowing they were a team. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by the betrayal he had witnessed. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding as he prepared to step into a storm of emotions. Mike answered, his face a mixture of relief and tension. "Tom, hey, thanks for coming." His voice was steady, but Tom could see the flicker of anxiety in his brother-in-law's eyes. "Where's Sarah?" Tom asked, his tone firm but not unkind. He was determined to keep his emotions in check, to approach this with an open heart, even if it felt like his own was splintering. "She's inside," Mike replied, stepping aside to let Tom in. The living room was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the brightness of the world outside. Sarah sat on the couch, her expression a blend of sorrow and apprehension. She looked up as Tom entered, her eyes widening with a mix of surprise and dread. "Tom," she breathed out, as if the weight of his name carried the burden of everything that had transpired. "I didn't expect you." "I can see that," he replied, crossing his arms over his chest. "We need to talk." Sarah nodded, biting her lip, clearly struggling to find the words. Tom took a seat across from her, the silence heavy between them, filled with unspoken words and raw emotions. He could see the toll the recent events had taken on her. The once vibrant spark in her eyes was now dulled by regret and guilt. "Mike called me," Tom began, his voice steady. "He's worried about you. I'm worried about you too. But we can't move forward until we confront what happened." Sarah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she opened her mouth to speak, but only a choked sob escaped. "I'm so sorry, Tom. I can't express how deeply I regret what happened. I never meant for this to happen." Tom's heart ached at her words. He had spent countless sleepless nights grappling with the betrayal, but hearing her remorse brought a strange sense of clarity. "Why, Sarah? You had everything. We had everything." "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep it separate," she confessed, her voice breaking. "But Mike, he just listened. I felt so alone, and he was there. I was foolish, and I ruined everything." Tom took a moment to let her words sink in. It was painful to hear, but it was also a step towards healing. "You have to understand that your actions have consequences, not just for me, but for you and for Mike too. This isn't just about us anymore." Mike, who had been standing at the edge of the room, shifted uncomfortably. "I never wanted to hurt you, Tom. I made a terrible mistake, and I own that. I'm sorry, truly." Tom turned to Mike, his expression unwavering. "You both have to face the reality of this. It's not just about apologies. There's a deeper reckoning that needs to happen." He pointedly looked at Sarah. "This isn't just going to go away because you say you're sorry. You need to think about why this happened in the first place." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I've been thinking about that a lot. I need to reflect on my choices, my life. I thought I was happy, but I've been running away from so much." Tom felt a flicker of empathy for her, a reminder that beneath the pain, there was a person struggling to find her way, just as he was. "Then that's where we start. You need to figure out why you felt the need to betray everything we built together." As the conversation unfolded, Tom encouraged both Sarah and Mike to explore their feelings, to confront the underlying issues that had led to this painful chapter. He suggested that they seek counseling, not just for their relationship, but for their own personal growth. "You have to take this seriously if you ever want to move forward." Days turned into weeks, and as they navigated the challenging terrain of their emotions, Tom found himself not only healing, but also reclaiming his own sense of self-worth. He immersed himself in community projects, spending time mentoring young mechanics and helping at local events, creating a network of support that bolstered his spirit. Meanwhile, Sarah began attending therapy sessions, discovering the roots of her discontent and the reasons behind her choices. She started volunteering at the local community center, finding fulfillment in helping others, and slowly began to rebuild her sense of purpose. Mike, on the other hand, faced the consequences of his actions head-on. He sought out guidance for his own struggles, realizing that his charm had masked deeper insecurities. He started attending support groups, where he faced the truth of his actions and what led him to betray his own family. As they began to find their footing individually, Tom noticed a shift in the dynamics. There was a newfound respect between him, Sarah, and Mike, albeit laced with the remnants of pain. They understood that they had all played a part in this tragic saga, and now they were working to rewrite their narratives. Tom often found himself reflecting on the journey they had taken. The betrayal had shattered him, but it had also forced him to confront his own vulnerabilities and to stand strong in the face of adversity. He had transformed his grief into resilience, and in doing so had become a beacon of hope for those around him. One evening, as Tom sat on his porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he received a message from Sarah. "Can we talk? I think I've made. He understood that this was not just a conversation about their past, but a chance to discuss their futures and the potential for healing. He replied with a simple, "I'd like that." As he awaited her arrival, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment could be pivotal, not just for their relationship, but for the possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation. The road ahead was uncertain, but with every step, Tom felt a growing sense of hope that they could emerge from this darkness into a new dawn, one defined not by betrayal, but by the strength of their shared journey toward redemption. In the glow of the early morning sun, Tom found himself sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, and reflecting on the unexpected turn his life had taken. He hadn't anticipated that the very people who had caused him pain would become allies in healing, but life has a way of surprising us. Sarah had embraced her new path with determination. Each week, she dedicated time to volunteering at the local youth center, where she mentored young girls, sharing her story of mistakes and redemption. Mike, too, had taken steps towards personal growth, attending support groups and engaging in community projects. Their commitment to change was palpable, and it was evident they were genuinely remorseful for the hurt they had caused. As summer approached, the town prepared for its annual festival. Tom, Sarah, and Mike decided to co-sponsor a booth promoting healing and forgiveness. Their goal was to inspire others who had faced similar challenges. The booth featured stories of resilience, where they shared their journey, how betrayal had led to transformation. On the day of the festival, the atmosphere was electric. Colorful banners waved in the gentle breeze, and laughter filled the air. The trio set up their booth, decorated with photos of community members and encouraging quotes. They drew in a crowd, sharing their stories, and soon people began to open up, sharing their own battles with betrayal and heartbreak. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the festival, Sarah took the microphone. Her voice wavered at first, but then she found her strength. "I stand here today not just as a woman who made a mistake, but as a person who has learned the importance of accountability, growth, and community," she said, glancing at Tom and Mike, who nodded in support. Tom felt a sense of pride swell within him. He realized that what had once been a source of pain had transformed into a catalyst for change, not just for him, but for everyone who had faced similar trials. The crowd listened intently, and at that moment, he saw the power of vulnerability. After Sarah spoke, Mike shared his own journey, acknowledging the harm he had caused and expressing deep regret for his actions. They drew in a crowd, sharing their stories, and soon people began to open up, sharing their own battles with betrayal and heartbreak. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the festival, Sarah took the microphone. Her voice wavered at first, but then she found her strength. "I stand here today not just as a woman who made a mistake, but as a person who has learned the importance of accountability, growth, and community," she said, glancing at Tom and Mike, who nodded in support. Tom felt a sense of pride swell within him. He realized that what had once been a source of pain had transformed into a catalyst for change, not just for him, but for everyone who had faced similar trials. The crowd listened intently, and at that moment, he saw the power of vulnerability. After Sarah spoke, Mike shared his own journey, acknowledging the harm he had caused and expressing deep regret for his actions. He emphasized the lessons learned and the importance of honesty in relationships. The audience responded with applause, moved by their courage. As the festival continued, Tom noticed a couple standing nearby, visibly distressed. They were in the midst of a heated argument. Recognizing the signs of a relationship on the verge of collapse, Tom approached them gently. "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear. Want to talk?" He shared his story, and soon they found themselves opening up about their struggles. That night, as the festival wound down and the stars twinkled overhead, Tom, Sarah, and Mike stood together, reflecting on the impact they had made. They realized they had taken their pain and turned it into a purpose, helping others find their way through darkness. Days turned into weeks, and the trio continued their community work, forging a bond that was both surprising and profound. Tom had learned the value of forgiveness, not just for Sarah and Mike, but for himself. He had emerged not as a victim of betrayal, but as a beacon of hope and resilience. In the end, Sarah and Mike's relationship blossomed into a deep friendship with Tom. They had each found their paths, and while the past could never be erased, it had paved the way for a brighter future. Tom went on to start a support group, welcoming those who had experienced infidelity, encouraging them to share their stories and heal together. As for Sarah and Mike, they nurtured their own journeys, learning to appreciate the importance of honesty and communication in their lives. They often reflected on their experiences and how they had led them to this unexpected alliance. In the heart of that small town, healing had taken root, and from the ashes of betrayal had risen a community bound by understanding, compassion, and the powerful belief that even the most broken relationships could be mended through honesty and support. Together, they continued to inspire others, reminding everyone that while the road to recovery is often rocky, it is also filled with the potential for growth, friendship, and new beginnings.